Welcome to the Addiction Solution Podcast. I'm Michelle Dunbar. Enjoy listening and watching as addiction experts Mark Sheeran and I cover controversial as well as helpful topics on addiction, how to move past it, and other related subjects. As two of the co-founders of the Freedom Model, Mark and I will give you a completely new perspective on the topics that matter to you. We will take to task the Recovery Society's lies and misinformation and replace them with facts, research, and the methods to move on from addiction struggles without 12-step meetings, rehabs, and the shackles of endless recovery. Let's escape the treatment and recovery trap together and learn to be free. Welcome to the truth. It's time for you and those you love to step off the addiction roller coaster for good and learn a solution that works. It's called Move Past Addiction Masterclass, and it's a free 1-hour live online class where you'll hear new and empowering information about how to solve addiction for good without steps, meetings, rehabs, or being labeled for life. If you're struggling or you love someone who is, then this masterclass is for you. To enroll in this free 1-hour class, click the link provided or go to thefreedommodel.org and choose the date and time that works for you. See you at the masterclass.
Welcome to the Addiction Solution Podcast. I'm Mark.
I'm Michelle Dunbar, and we have a guest today.
Yes, this is my friend Rainey. And I met Rainey when we first started here at the Freedom Model doing our TikTok account.
That's right.
And did you already have a TikTok account at that point, Rainey?
I think I had just started. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we started right around the same time.
Yeah, it was like the summer of 22.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's been that long.
I know, right? It's 2024. Holy crap.
So one of the things that Rainey was probably our first TikTok fan and follower. I think he was like fan number 5, you know? And but what was interesting was I became a fan of his because he has Unconquered Healing, and that's the name of his organization. And he was saying the same things I was saying many years ago when I was leaving the cult of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was just so impressed by his willingness to be vulnerable and tell it like it was. And I want to preface this. I want to give a little introduction here because I want to talk about Rainey from my perspective, and then I'll let him do some talking. But what was interesting was AA makes you, it's this narrative, especially in AA, of either being broken or being a tough guy or both. And you're never allowed to just be yourself. So there's these weird narratives. There's this big culture of junkie pride, sort of my story is worse than your story. And so you start to take on this bullshit narrative of yourself, competing with the other members. It's just part of a cult mentality. And you start to morph your whole existence into weird narratives. So one of the things that Rainey said so articulately was that his whole image on life had changed, and that AA was a corrosive force in his life, and he didn't realize it. Well, it was the same way with me. It's the same way with Michelle. And what we're talking, and then he said something that I think encompassed the whole thing. We call it the Recovery Society. He calls it the Recovery Cartel, which I have stolen from Rainey. So yeah, I'll give him credit today, nationally, internationally. And but it's such a great term, the Recovery Cartel, because that's exactly how they treat you.
Yeah.
So with that introduction, I just want Rainey, maybe I'll ask some questions, but why don't you tell your story about leaving AA, being in it, and some of the stuff that I just talked about.
I didn't expect to get emotional, so I got some tears.
I know. We totally get it.
Yeah, like it. This cartel and this cult almost killed me.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
It almost killed me. And I'm a tough motherfucker.
I know you are.
I grew up in Boston, 15 minutes north of Boston, born in Salem, Massachusetts. you know, I'm 25% Irish, Italian, French, and Polish. So I grew up with an Italian grandmother that hated the Irish. And
Me
so,
too.
so looking back on identity and whatnot, I never knew who I was because, like, my grandmother, like, I knew I had Irish blood in me, and the Italian was like, I was pushed that I was 100% Italian, but yet I wasn't. And
Yeah.
and and it was like, it was confusing, right? But you don't know that as a kid. It's just normal, right?
Right.
And I grew up in a narcissistic cult. My grandmother's a malignant, covert narcissist. I don't like identities, but this is what she is. She is a psychopath. That was the matriarch of our family that we thought was mentally well.
Yeah, the strong woman. Yeah.
And she was far from mentally well. And this is the woman that ran the family, destroyed the family. And I believe, if anything led me to being an IV drug addict, it was the mental mind fuckery of my noni.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the cult of Alcoholics Anonymous at 23 years old. I was a 3-sport all-state high school athlete. I was popular. I was a good-looking kid. I was, 6'1", 225 naturally in high school. Sports were like, just came to me naturally. I excelled. Everybody knew who I was. I'm a St. Pierre. My grandfather had 19 brothers and sisters. Like, I was that dude my whole life. And discovered Oxycontin in 1999, and the rest is history up until basically December of 2020, when I find the freedom model. And maybe 6 months prior to that, 9 months prior to that, maybe a year, I'm managing a sober house, and I'm like, I think I'm in a fucking cult.
And now, how many years were you in at that point, like in the recovery cartel as a whole?
2001 was my first state-funded detox experience, and I've been to more than 50 different treatment centers, halfway houses, methadone clinics, sober,
Yeah.
just just the whole 20 years, man. I moved to South Florida in 2002. Like, I saw the hustle before it was a hustle, or before anyone knew it was a hustle. And so I saw the money I could make, and I fell for I can help people. And so for the last 20 years, I went and I got my degree in psychology. I became a yoga teacher because I could put together years sober. I couldn't stay sober because of what they taught me, right? Once you start, you can't stop. Once you're stopped, you can't stay stopped.
Right. All the myths.
All the nonsense. And it was my beliefs that were creating hell on earth. It was fucking hell on earth.
Yeah. Yeah. So you go to your first detox, and you're a young man. You're a D1 athlete at the time. As I recall, you broke up with a girl, had a hard time, which is a classic sort of, the ages of what I call it, from 17 to 25. I call it the gauntlet. Like, a guy is running the gauntlet. I don't know about women. I'm not a woman, but you're running through this era where you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You're trying to be an adult, and it's terrifying. So you're right in the middle of the gauntlet somewhere at that time in your life, confused, but performing. But then you're taking oxys, partying. Am I describing this right? And then a girl breaks up with you, and you have an identity crisis of some kind. So what happened?
Between the girl breaking up with me and the college athletic career. So June of 2000, I'm playing in the College World Series. August of 2001, I'm being told I'm a powerless, insane, selfish, self-centered piece of shit that has to fight this disease for the rest of his life. And I'm like, whoa. I was just partying too hard. Like, I went to Mexico and got a couple thousand oxys for New Year's Eve. And George Jung was my hero. I was fascinated with drug trafficking. I was fascinated with, La Cosa Nostra and all that mafia shit growing up in Boston with Whitey Bulger and all that. And so I wanted to be a drug trafficker. Once my athletic career, well, I was already selling drugs. And so I went, copped a couple thousand oxys. And that's when my habit really took off, was New Year's of 2000 going into 2001. I go to Cancun, smuggle back a few thousand oxys, and I catch a habit. But I end up going for help, asking for help. My parents send me to, my dad's connected with everybody. He calls the guy in charge of the Middleton jail. The guy gets me a free detox bed at Danvers Detox. I go to Danvers Detox, and I remember being like, this is a cult. But like, what do you know at 23 years old? Right. What do I know about drug addiction? I didn't know that I could party my way into being a drug addict or like, I wouldn't even have referred to those were losers. Like, like, and it was just so confusing. And I fell right into the cartel's hands. I went to detox a couple times and then decided Boston was the problem. And I moved to South Florida. And then, I fell into a multi-million-dollar pill mill, like drug opiate addicts, like wet dream fantasy.
You were part of that. Like, I think we started talking about the Florida rehab shuffle in like 2010. Yeah. So you were right in the midst of all of that.
The very beginning.
Describe some of that experience.
Oh, geez, man. Well, I should have known from the very beginning that sober living, my friend got stabbed in his sleep by his roommate. First experience in sober living.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice. You were initiated.
Wow.
Into the cartel.
Right. And I relapse. I decide I meet some girls. She gives me some Xanax coming home from an AA meeting in Delray Beach, and I relapse and I get kicked out. I wake up handcuffed to a hospital bed in Boca Raton, homeless. Going like, I'm a middle-class kid from Danvers. I grew up with a swimming pool and a Volvo, and mom and dad coaching all my teams, and my house was the house everybody hung out at, and everybody knew me. And I was like, so it's like, fucking what the fuck, like, whoa.
So let me jump in there. So let me frame this out for our listeners and watchership. So you're basically come from a blue collar family, nice family. Yeah. Hardworking. Yeah. Your grandmother was, so the stage is set. You go to this detox. You're starting to take, the recovery cartel is sucking you in with powerlessness narrative. You're not really buying, but then part of the fantasy that you were growing up with the whole mob thing, drug thing, you got a taste of it. Then you land in this perfect storm in Southern Florida. And so the recovery cartel coupled with the drug cartel, now it's fulfilling all these fantasies, but you don't realize that you're getting sucked into a recovery cult.
Well, and they're married. Right. Drug and they're married.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're now a cog in the machine being played by both sides.
Yep. And don't even know it. And I'm like, I'm boycotting AA because I can see I'm a hustler. This is a collection of a bunch of has-beens. They never made the junior varsity team. Right. Like get out of here. Like, please. But
you're also being played.
Right. I'm buying into this. Am I powerless? Right. Like, what's going on here? Is there any, you start doubting yourself. Is there any truth to this stuff? And I started hustling. I started going to pain management before pill mills ever existed. There was so few. I've never heard anyone tell the story correctly in South Florida. I think I'm like the only one. There was so few pain managements that you had to be careful doctor shopping.
Right. Yeah.
So it wasn't like it was in 2008 where there was one on every single corner. There was 6 or 10 of them, and some of them owned multiple ones, and there'd be one in Hollywood, and there'd be one in Coconut Creek, and there'd be one in Delray. So you had to be careful not to go to one that was operating 3. So it wasn't, and it just year after year, it got crazier and crazier.
Right.
And sober living got crazy. Like it was this perfect storm of just over prescribing oxycodone and doctors writing scripts. And at first it was legitimate, and then it just got easier and easier and easier. Meanwhile, all these people from all over the United States are coming to South Florida.
And kids are dying now. And then some of the big addiction chains, rehab chains start having their call centers pumping kids into these places because there's kickback schemes and kids are dying. And so that gets exposed. So now we're all the way up to 2008, 2010, and it's just a raging storm of chaos, really, and corruption. And it was so bad. I want to tell our fans this, our followers, that it got so bad that Google shut down all bid per click advertising for rehabilitation. They've never done that in any industry.
Yeah, that was like 2014.
Yeah, they shut it down for a year because they realized they were complicit in the scam and they were making billions. So Google was making billions while the treatment industry down there was making hundreds of millions. The sober living industry and the rehab industry, just in the state of Florida, this was happening, the shuffle where they were shuffling kids.
I mean, it was happening in other parts of the country, but
California was big.
but Florida was really
the epicenter.
I mean, we would have parents call us, and I mean, I remember one particular family that was trying to find out where their kid even was, because they were in a rehab in Florida. They had sent them down, but the rehab in Florida had sent them to some other detox.
Yeah, it was in Texas. They shuffled them to Texas, the highest bidder. It was all about bidding.
Yep. And then so they didn't even know, and they were terrified. They had to get the police involved to be able to get their kid extracted.
Yeah, the parents, this was what was so crazy about that. Me and Michelle were in the office on the conference call with the parents, and we were like, this is a minor.
Yeah, this was like a 17-year-old kid.
You don't know where they are, and they're like, well, the treatment center said it's best for their treatment for us not to have contact.
Not to have contact.
And I go, you don't know what I said. You got to get the police involved. We do. Yeah. We felt like we should. And I said, yeah. And it ended up, he wasn't even in that state anymore. They had busted him.
To Texas. I think it was Texas.
And then finally me, Michelle, the police contacted the staffs, figured all this out. And then they almost wouldn't let him go.
Right.
It was and then they were going to get charged with kidnapping.
Right.
And then they gave up the kid, and they drove him out to the fence, and they didn't ever give him any of his stuff, and their parents picked him up and took off. And that was right in the thick of all that.
Yeah.
Then we were
that was probably
calls,
10, 12 years ago.
And then we were getting calls from all these different facilities because I wrote an article about it. And then people were calling me on a protocol to get their children. And
we started being part of the solution, so to speak.
Yeah, with how to get the police,
like guiding parents to extracting their kids from this craziness. I mean, it was surreal to me.
It was really crazy. So I digress for a minute, but I wanted to frame that out for the people listening.
So Rainey was you were like right there in the thick of it all. It's just fascinating to me.
So talk now about, Rainey, about AA specifically, big book thumping. We Michelle and I, we did all this, and there's a cult language that when you meet somebody who is deep in the big book thumping cult, it's the strangest thing. We've never met Rainey, but we could literally sit and talk in a separate language about self-centeredness and all the trademarks of the cult. But go ahead, tell us about how you got involved in that aspect of the treatment world.
Man, it's so 2001 till 2005. I don't really buy in. I'm going to meetings. I really never. I dated this Seminole girl that I met in treatment. So I lived on the Seminole Indian Reservation, which like changed my life, right? A white boy from Boston living on the Seminole Indian Reservation, right? And Big Cypress in the middle of the swamp. And it was just crazy.
That's cool.
And I remember saying to her, I have a better connection to God swimming at the beach at Delray Beach than I do at these meetings. This shit just ain't for me. And so the first 3, 4, 5, I wrote, I tried to make it work, but it was, if you have any sense, you're like, this just don't make sense.
Right. It's it's filled with contradictions. Yeah.
And I end up going to a spiritual treatment center in New Hampshire, where they take you through the first 164 pages of the big book. And
I did that.
They hooked me. Yep. They hooked me with the word recovered.
Yeah, that's what we did too.
We did too.
We did all this. It's so embarrassing to me now. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
You can be recovered.
Yes, go ahead.
That's what I want.
Right. So on the first page, it says how many hundreds of men and women have recovered. Notice how it says recovered. And I look back, and that's how they got me, because that's all I wanted. Yep, I just wanted to move on with my life.
Right.
But then it's like, you're recovered, and then you're in recovery, and then you got to, so I end up buying in, and I put together 6 months. And then, what I noticed kept happening is I kept putting my life together. Some huge emotional event would happen that I didn't know how to deal with. I would turn to taking an oxycodone or Oxycontin, a Percocet, a Vicodin. I would take one, nothing would happen. And then began me going out and destroying my life, trying to attempt to hit a rock bottom. My first detox, I had never snorted cocaine. I had never seen cocaine. I had never snorted a pill. I had never shot a pill. I was simply eating Oxycontin.
Right.
That's it. And this cartel morphed me and taught me and shaped me into destroying myself, until I destroyed myself so many times. I mean, I gained 100 pounds. I made and lost millions of dollars, homeless, to having 500,000 cash stashed away, like in a whole bunch of different assortments of that. Right.
Yep.
And repairing my life, and then having some huge emotional event, because I repaired my life. My life got so good. My identity was in this broken person. So I just kept recreating this brokenness.
All right. Let me jump in there, because this is a great spot to help our followers. So some of you may be saying, yeah, that's how addiction works. The disease works. Well, I think what I want to say here is that no, that's what you're taught that a fictitious disease does. And if you take on this identity that the addiction disease is real, like Rainey did, like I did, like Michelle did, you will act out the very thing that you define as disease in your life. It's not a disease. It's you. It's beliefs. So let me frame out what I think I'm hearing from Rainey, and then I'll ask some more questions. So what I think I'm hearing is, you take on the identity, you take a situation where really being in the cult is untenable for any length of time, because it's so miserable, because you're constantly told, especially in the real deep, what he's talking about, the big book thumping cults, you're told you can recover, but not really. You can recover fully, but not really. You need to serve. You need to have a spiritual connection to God, and to be granted sobriety, and to be recovered, you have to have spiritual fitness. So the only way to have spiritual fitness is to promote the cult. Ironically, in AA, they don't say you can be spiritually. Let's say that was the truth. Let's say that spiritual fitness was the answer to addiction, right? Some sort of spiritual essence or experience. Why can't you find it at the Catholic Church or in nature, or just leave the meetings and never go back and just have a spiritual life somewhere else? No. You got to be attached to the meetings and the service structure, because of Bill Wilson's fantasy that one alcoholic works with another alcoholic. There's no other way. That's the twisted shit right there.
Yep.
So they manipulate believable things like a spiritual life, and they manipulate it into basically recruiting for money. Would you say you experienced that, Rainey?
Yeah, it was so confusing, because these people are telling me to be honest. They're telling me I need to be spiritually fit, and they're sleeping with prostitutes.
Right.
That's the other part.
They're
Right.
cheating on their wife. Like, yo, I'm a hustler. I can see through bullshit a mile away.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like the leaders are the sickest, most demented, most dishonest, unspiritually fit ones who are standing up at the podium, lying through their teeth, talking about how spiritually fit they are. Meanwhile, they're getting girls to pay their rent in sexual favors, right? Because I know tons of sober house owners, tons of treatment center owners. I know girls that were chained to beds in sober living down here. I mean, shit that's like crazy, dude, like fucking crazy. And you're telling me I believed I was constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself, and that's why I couldn't stay sober.
Right.
Right. It becomes such a well when life is going too good. I mean, this for me, the way it would be was that idea of life can't get too good either, because if it gets too good, you're going to get knocked right off that pink cloud. No matter how much time I put together, if I was too happy in the meetings, there would always be somebody standing there waiting to tell me, be careful, be careful. You're looking a little cocky there. You're looking a little like you're a little too happy and too what? Like, isn't that the goal? Is that like, I don't get it, but I would create it, right? Because you'd go up and up and up, and then something would happen, like life does, right?
Yes.
I mean, life happens for everybody, but something would happen, and I would immediately attach it to, that's because I'm an alcoholic. These things happen to me and knock me down because I got bipolar and I'm an alcoholic. And no, they fucking happen to you because shit happens.
Yeah. Because that's life.
Because it's life.
Yeah.
But you attach it. And so then, thankfully for me, I already knew, well, I never wanted to go back to drinking again. I already knew that drinking wouldn't help me. So I didn't go back. But I went to food. I went to other things that I was trying to like find to give me what I was seeking, so I hadn't really solved the problem. I went to cigarettes. I went to like a good AAer does, right? You go to cigarettes and coffee and food, isn't that?
And hookers, apparently.
And apparently hookers. I didn't go to hookers.
I didn't either, but apparently that is common.
That's what you do.
Yeah, they were predators, man. The room was filled with financial and sexual predators, and it just
for sure.
It was but it was so confusing too, because then I'm being judgmental. Like I rewrote my entire history. I forgot I was a 3-sport athlete. I forgot I played 2 sports in college. Right. I forgot I was Mr. Popular. I forgot I was Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, going to Red Sox games and flying to Miami to see the Patriots and having all this fun. My life had become the cartel.
Well, what's crazy about that is the way they reframe all of your success is somehow that is a characteristic of the ego that drove you to drink, that drove you to drugs. And you have to keep that ego in check, because after all, humility is the earmark of the recovered alcoholic, right? So all of a sudden they're like, they want your peg knocked down as many as possible. They want you on the lowest rung of the ladder so they can control you. Because the last thing they want is a confident, moving forward human being. That cults cannot have that, because they can't contain the human evolution of that person if they have any sort of confidence. So we talk about it in the freedom model with the positive drive principle. You're always moving in the direction of what you believe will make you happiest. The last thing the rulers in AA want for you is for you to think that you have mastery over your mind. I mean, Bill Wilson, what did he say? Self-knowledge availed us nothing. Right? Yeah. How many times did you hear that?
Oh my! And then meanwhile, I'm getting into the law of attraction and all this different stuff, and going and like diving. I never read a book before treatment. I got into reading. I started studying. I went back to college, reading all these books, and I'm starting to go, wait a minute, self-knowledge is the answer.
That's right.
But yet I got this thing ringing in my head saying self-knowledge avails us. I mean, you don't think they were nefarious. I don't. it's like they came up with this perfect storm where they had like every base covered to get you to stay in this cartel or cult and doubt yourself. You can't be too happy. They want you like working at Dunkin' Donuts, going to AA for the rest of your life. Like,
yeah,
that's exactly right. So let me go back to what you just said about, I don't think they're nefarious. So I don't think that there is a purposeful cult except for with Bill W. I think the originator, he had a vision and he was very open about it. It's kind of crazy to me.
it is
that people followed him. You know, he even wrote about it in AA conference approved literature, which by the way is very weird to say conference approved literature, right? Cult
you can
approved.
only read cult approved literature,
right? Cult approved.
but you're right, Mark. Like when Mark is the historian on AA, and when we were doing the 12-step deprogramming course, even the first time, and then this time I learned even more. You know, Bill's own words, like he tells the truth. He wants to be the guru. He wants to be the number one man. Like his goal in his whole life was to be a deity of sorts.
Yeah. It was.
And to be rich.
And then in his last dying day, what is he doing but begging for whiskey on his deathbed and cigarettes as he's suffocating to death from COPD? I mean, his life was nothing but philandering, money making, and tragedy. And I mean,
he was a predator. He was the original predator.
Yeah, he was
financial and sexual predator.
Yeah. Yep.
Like attracts like.
It does.
It does.
It does. And it's always amazing to me because I do think there are many, many people in the cult who are kind and genuine and they want to help people and they have good intentions. But I also think there are many, many people in the cult that are just like Bill Wilson because it attracts that. And they are predatory and they hide behind the idea that I'm just trying to help another alcoholic. And they are the ones that point the fingers at us and say, you're just trying to make money off vulnerable people. If anybody points that finger at me, I'm like, oh, you better turn that finger around because that is not us.
Yeah.
You know, you are actually, that's a classic case of projection. And it's really, really a shame, quite frankly.
It is. So now let's talk about you climbing out of the cult.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the little steps where it sounds like you were always questioning and conflicted, but you're sucked in for 20 years. But somewhere along the line, you're reading these books, you're starting, but there had to be a moment where you go, I think I'm fucking done with this. Because we got there. Too.
Yes.
So when was that moment?
Good question.
Right. I'm 40 years old, going on 41. I'm in my 70th treatment center. I'm scholarshiped by this kid that is the definition of sexual and financial predator, owns the biggest treatment center in New Hampshire. The 13-Step podcast is all about it. And I'm going, I'm older now, right? I'm more mature. I'm like,
you're evolving.
I'm seeing it for what it is, which is just predation. And I'm going, I've always respected women. I got a mother, I got a sister. I don't know what it is. I've just never been a predator like that.
Yeah.
I respect women, man. And I'm like, something ain't right. There was a kid running around graping women in AA, and me and one other kid were going to put a beating, to this kid, and no one else saw anything wrong with it. Now, my best friend is managing the sober house where this girl gets, and I'm like, now I had just beat a case. I faced life in prison for a crime I was the victim in. 6 years house. It was a nightmare. I experienced the system. I never got arrested when I was hustling. I end up I called the police one night. My neighbor attacks me. I end up facing life in prison, a PBL in Florida, no bond. takes 6 years. I end up, I lose the case. I go to trial. I get a mandatory minimum prison sentence. I win it on appeal. Once I win the appeal, I go to treatment, and I've experienced life at this point, and I'm like, this ain't adding up. This is sick shit. And I realized that I'm in a cult, and it eventually leads me to the freedom model. I mean, it's the shortest, easiest way. December of 2020, I have this like breakdown after managing a sober house for a year, being taken advantage of for a discounted rent. You know, the owners are nowhere to be seen, but this allows me to do me. Like, I'm managing a sober house. I'm living in Maine 2 weeks out of the month and living in Florida the other 2 weeks out of the month. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
Wow.
Right? But this is what allowed me to evolve and be like, no one cares. All they care about is money. And it's just all manipulation and hiding behind these spiritual principles. And long story short, I find the freedom model, and like,
how did you find it? How did that happen?
The girl, my friend Colleen, found, late night scrolling in a sober house, finds the freedom model. Because you got to realize, when I'm going through this, there's no internet.
Right.
I was only introduced to 12 steps, AA or NA, and NA has got a weird vibe.
Yeah, it does.
I never
it sure does.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you got to realize, when I'm going through this from 2001 till 2020, there's no internet. I mean, it's the early stages. There's no face. None. And I'm a hustler. I'm a street dude. I ain't on no social media. I'm running from the feds.
Right. You're keeping off social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was certainly, the web existed, but you weren't on it. Yeah. You weren't on Facebook like some of these jokers going, hey, look at all my pills and my Glock, you fucking moron.
Right? No. come arrest me, DEA. You know what I'm saying?
I do not get it. Okay. So she does a search and finds us somehow, and then
a lot of people found us around that same time period, because I've worked with so many people in the last 3-4 years who found us because of an article you wrote about AA being a cult.
Yeah, it ended up being the #1 search result.
And addiction not being a disease, right? So we had like kind of blog articles that kind of took on a life of their own, and I think it was about AA being a cult.
Yeah,
which we stayed away from for a long time, calling it that. Like we
I got beat up by them. I mean, they came after me for 8 years when I mentioned it, and they destroyed my life. Yeah,
but I think it's how we've attracted people that are already thinking that. They're already starting to think that, and they're like a woman that I've worked with now, and she's a therapist who was in AA and was also studying cults, and one of her specialties became helping people escape from them. In the meantime, she's in AA, right? And so she says to her husband at the time, she's like, I think it is a cult. And he's steeped. That's how she met him. And he's like, oof, that's ridiculous. And so she starts Googling it, finds our article, gets our book, starts reading about it. I think this was like 2019, 2020. And she's like, oh no. She's like, how can I help people get out of a cult when I'm in one?
That's honestly, now that you guys are saying it, you're making me remember. So I start probably maybe 2015. I start watching the Leah Remini thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Scientology.
And then I'm in a sober house in 2015, and I see the Scientology thing, Dope Sick, kicking dope in the middle of the night on HBO. And so like God is like putting these little snippets of AA, you're in a cult, buddy. But
yes.
I couldn't see it. So it probably took about 5 years of the Leah Remini and the Scientology stuff. And then I think what it was I Googled, is AA a cult? And I don't know if I found you guys, and it was like, there was nothing back then about AA being a cult.
I know.
That's right. So you find us, and did you get our book? I guess I never knew how this all happened.
Man, I went crazy with the podcast, 100%. Okay. So I find at the same time, same couple month period, I find you guys, I find Lance Dodds, I read The Sober Truth, and Mark Lewis's book.
Yes.
Good ones. Yep.
Yeah. Biology of Desire.
Yes. Yep. And it's like bada bing, bada boom. And then I'm Googling, is AA a cult? And there's not really anything, but then you guys start to get into it. Like, I've listened to every single podcast.
We have many.
Because I been following you guys. Really, it was just a perfect storm that it just all came together. And all I ever wanted, man, from the age of 23 was to just move on with my life.
That's it. Me too. Mm-hmm. Me too. It was 20 years of just a distraction from moving forward. It was such a blanket, like a veil was put on my eyes. And I just can't believe. Now, in my situation, I took that cult experience, and obviously I've made the freedom model the antithesis because I said I have to leverage this wasted time. Now, but I think for a lot of people, that's not, they just need to let go and move forward, man. But what it does do, there's a benefit to being involved in something like this, regardless if you leverage that experience or not. The benefit is your eyes are open to scam. You can spot. I mean, I watch the news, I watch, and I'm like, scam. My family's like, how do you, they used to call me Nostradamus. I shit you not. They're like, how the fuck do you, how do you predict all this stuff? And I'm like, because human nature is control. We have freedom of mind, but we morph into control a lot because we're taught control as children. So if you take the positive drive, which is this desire to move forward, a lot of people they move forward, but then they start trying to control people either in their business or in some way, shape, or form, like your grandmother did, right? In some sick, twisted way, or just in, common, normal ways. But when you've been with somebody with their thumb on you and crushing your free will, and you've been destroyed that way, boy, I accept the world for what it is, man. I just tell the truth and I live my truth. And I do not care. People are like, I can't believe this shit you say. I cannot believe that you get on your podcast and you look so unprofessional and you swear and you do. I can't believe you get away with all. I go, you know why? Because I don't care. I don't care what anybody thinks. I cared.
You live your truth.
Yeah, I cared my whole life what people thought. And it damn near killed me.
Yep.
Gun in my mouth, literally, and I don't care anymore. So tell us about becoming free, the path of freedom.
Wow. It was painful. It was emotional. I never learned how to deal with my emotions. I was a big guy in Boston. You got to be tough. And I'm as tough as anyone can be. I might lose a fight or two, but I mean, mentally, and I mean, I faced life in prison. I've been through the ringer, man. And most people, I don't think, could have survived 50-something treatment centers and what I went through.
That's absolutely right.
And so it's not about physically tough. It's a mental toughness. It's the Boston in me, dude.
Yeah. Us Northeasters are dead.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And I mean, moving away from Boston, I learned how angry everybody was. Boston's an angry place, man.
Yeah. The Northeast is tough.
Yeah. And I was a sensitive dude. I'm an empath. I'm a sensitive, loving, but I was 6'1", 230 at 14 years old. Like, I was just a big athletic and you know, times were different 20, 30 years ago. You could fight in the street and I mean, that's what we used to do. We used to go,
That is for sure.
you know, like we used to go drink and just fight.
Yeah, I know.
Right. You fight with the guy one day, the next day you're sharing a beer again.
Yeah, you're fighting your friends is what you're doing.
And I mean, times have changed to where it's like, I mean, it was a culture shock coming back to all this and being like, what is even going on in the world?
I know.
But I was really in a cult, and I really had to do some deep, deep emotional, spiritual unpacking and healing and deprogramming and realizing that I did have that grit and I did know all along, and my intuition never guided me wrong. And I always was able to read the bullshit. Like I can, how did I avoid prison all those years? How did I avoid never catching a case? I mean, I was big time. Luck, absolutely, but a lot of it was smarts.
Yeah.
And trust in my intuition and being like, I'm about to get robbed. I'm about to get beat. I ain't going to that hotel room right now.
Right.
And starting to give myself credit, starting to believe in myself and believe in my power and my ability to, yeah, I might have made and lost millions, and I might be essentially homeless and have nothing at 40, but I just bought a $700,000 duplex. Like I manifested that, and not from hustling. I had to get used to being broke. I had to get used to my wife being the breadwinner and dealing with all of that. I'm getting used to just getting by, but then studying financial literacy and understanding assets over liabilities and mindset and just taking my power back.
All right. So that in freedom model language is you embraced your autonomy. You figured out that you had free will and you have autonomy. You have your own thinking apparatus. And once people, that's what you're talking about. So I want to frame this for the followers out there, that all of you, every human that's listening to this right now, has the ability to think for themselves. And anybody that tries to tell you you don't, whether it's a bad relationship, a bad marriage, a boss, or a cult for that matter. A cult is just the extreme example of control.
A therapist.
A therapist. Yeah, I've had tons of bad therapy. A priest who's got his own motives. I mean, it can be any number of people. A teacher. I mean, half the teachers are.
Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I hated education because of the control model. But then there were people who embraced my autonomy and said, I'm not here to control you. What do you think, Mark? And I was usually stymied, but at the same time, excited, just super excited. And I said, that makes sense to me. I'm excited about that. You care about what I think? Yeah, I care about what you think. And it was her father. It was a teacher in 5th grade and a teacher in college. One in school, one in college, and Jerry. Those 3 people changed my life in a myriad of countless faces that tried to control me, manipulate me, abuse me, screw me, my whole life. And isn't it remarkable how if you have 3 people that care and actually value your autonomy, how you expand, you become happy, you learn love. That's what love is, not attachment, not control. It's I value what you think. So that's what the freedom model is. I tell people all the time, the freedom model is you are a free will oriented, autonomous with your own thoughts, capable person in the pursuit of happiness. Go. Go. And all this mythology. Now, the other 2/3 of the book is breaking down all the bullshit you believe that's keeping you trapped. So I think that when I watched Rainey go through this, I watched somebody like myself that had a lot of unpacking. The confusion is, can I believe in myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I trust my own thinking? Can I trust my own mind? That was the hard, I think for many people, that's the hardest thing to embrace as you're leaving the cult, as you're, because even if you have, like, even the people that I've worked with that have years of sobriety, the other areas of their life they're struggling in because of that idea that, oh, I can't trust my own thinking.
Yep.
I mean, that's a really awful place to be.
It's devastating. So now tell us what's the result of your free thinking, free will oriented autonomy. Tell us.
I mean, I built my own cannabis business. I started it. I failed. I was in Maine. I moved back to Florida. I started a cannabis business. I started a coaching business. I just bought a duplex. I've made money in crypto. I've made money in stocks. I've lost money in those things. I've lost 100 pounds. I'm halfway done with a book.
I have a car rental business as well.
I have a car. I mean, there's so many things. I have a car rental business that I started that the first year was, how many businesses are successful? We made money the first year. Like, it's like, and I didn't, I was just a drug dealer. I was a drug smuggler that was super creative and super smart, but was stuck in the cartel of Alcoholics Anonymous, believing I couldn't trust my own thinking that because if I had 40,000 and I wanted 80,000, and then I had 80,000 and I wanted 160, that was alcoholic thinking.
Right.
No, you want money. Money's okay, and you can be free, and you can go on vacation, and you can live your life, and you can do whatever the fuck you want.
That's right.
And not feel one bit bad about any of it.
That's right.
It was, if I could sum it up, what AA did was confuse me.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly
makes you blind to your autonomy, free will, and your pursuit of happiness. It makes you blind.
It makes you feel bad for those things.
Yeah. It distracts you from you. It distracts you from you. And here's the wild part. And I want to end with this. If there's anything that I hope people get out of this podcast, is that you are the operative force. What I mean by that is, in your mind, there is no way to look outside yourself and have somebody fix you. So anytime you're looking for that, you are literally ripe for the picking for somebody to control you.
Great point.
Just it's okay to struggle. It's okay to wander the earth and try and figure out who you are and be lonely and uncomfortable for a little while. You will find your way. My first year of being out of the cult, the first 12 years was brutal for me, figuring out how to live my life and build. But you know what? I built a wonderful life for me and my kids and my wife and friends. I did.
So, okay.
All right. So that was weird. Our internet went down, and thankfully this kept recording, but Rainey got cut off. I think somebody must have hit a pole or something out here. So we just want to say, thanks to have Rainey on.
We're so happy to have Rainey on. If you want to learn about Rainey, you can follow Unconquered Healing on TikTok, and also I think he's on Instagram as the same handle. Okay. So that's Unconquered Healing. And
I don't know if he's on Facebook or not, but his name is spelled Rene.
Yes.
Not Rainey, but his name is Rainey, but it's Rene, Saint Pierre.
Yep.
And Unconquered Healing. I do want to say that if anybody out there is looking to get coached on the freedom model, there are various ways that can happen. You can also be taught by Michelle and I specifically. You can request that. There's ways to do that. Also, we have a bunch of coaches throughout the world that teach the freedom model, and they're certified through our research organization, Baldwin Research Institute Incorporated. So they go through very hardcore training to be a part of what we do. So
the best way to learn about all of this, okay, is to go to our masterclass. We have a free 1 hour live masterclass every single week. There's a QR code right there that Mark is pointing at right now. You can click on that QR code. You can also go to thefreedommodel.org and get into that masterclass. We also have a mobile app that gives you easy access to the masterclass as well.
And that's the Freedom Model app.
Yep, the Freedom Model app. So go to thefreedommodel.org for the mobile app and also to register for the masterclass and to learn more about our coaching options.
And the website over the next couple of weeks is going to look messy. We are revamping it and changing a lot of things. So bear with us as we do that. All right, everybody.
Yes. Thanks so much and have a great week.
And do we have the phone number somewhere on there?
Yeah, it's up behind the little recording symbol.
Oh, that's why I can't see. It's 888-424-2626 for those that are listening.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Are you struggling with a drug or alcohol problem, but you don't want to go to rehab or group meetings? Well, that's why we created the non-12-step Freedom Model Coaching Program in 2011. Through video conferencing on Zoom or Skype, you can work privately with a certified Freedom Model coach from your home or office on your schedule. And here's the best part. With the Freedom Model, you'll never be labeled an addict or an alcoholic, and we won't tell you to go to 12-step meetings or hamper your life with endless recovery rituals. Instead, you can learn exactly why addiction isn't a disease and how you can solve the problem for good and move on with your life. Do you want to be completely free from your addiction? Do you want to never have to attend meetings, rehabs, or addiction counseling ever again? And do you want to solve your problem from the comfort of home? Then call us at 888-424-2626 to talk with a Freedom Model coach today and experience the Freedom Model difference.